Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's high noon. As chair of the Planning and Organization, call the meeting to order. Brenda, would you call a roll, please?
Boushey.
Here.
Audette.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Powers.
Here.
Erickson.
Yes.
Christianson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Next item, communication information on the trans system plan.
Transit.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This will be covered on the work session. Comments to Teri or Nancy. Nancy?
Just briefly, we're at the stage of our transit development plan where we're starting to look at past surveys and information we received from businesses, the industrial park, our drivers, a majority of our riders, some of our services that we provide transit to. We've taken a look at those. We're preparing goals. From those goals, we're now looking at some route changes. In particular, if you have any questions on the East Grand Forks City routes, you can feel free to contact me. One major improvement that we're looking at for the city of East Grand Forks is providing on-demand service for the city as a whole. And by on-demand service, you're still working off of either a phone call through dispatch or on our route app itself. You would schedule a pickup. We would pick you up at a given location, not house to house, but at similar to like a bus corner or a shelter, something similar to that, and then we would connect you with a different route in Grand Forks if you needed to transfer. It works quite well in other cities. Because of our ridership, we see that as a bonus for us. And then we would continue our routes 4-6. Right now they run on the off half hours, so if one's in town from noon to 12:30, then the other one runs from 12:30 to 1. They cover some different areas, but primarily run along Central Avenue and 220. So we're looking at consolidating those and just providing more service. There's a few different connections, a few different large shelters that we're looking at in Grand Forks, just making some general improvements. So if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call. Otherwise, it's online, and we'll just continue to move forward on that plan.
Nancy?
Yes.
Is that, what did you call it, like you pick up and call? Is that just strictly East Grand Forks, or can Grand Forks also?
Grand Forks is going to have a similar on-demand service in a smaller area, kind of that, the Riverside area. Because that has low numbers. However, our fixed route is typically a better option with, as our ridership goes up, because we have set times that we arrive at locations. And so that is available as well, and we'll continue with those regular route services in Grand Forks and then the one in East Grand Forks. And then we do have what we call a dial-a-ride or paratransit service. And that is for senior and disabled, so you have to qualify for that. But that is that's a door-to-door service. So they pick you up at your house and they drop you off at the location. It's a 24-hour notice, and there is a charge for that. It's at a higher charge than it is for the regular route, but it's still a good, valuable service that a lot of the seniors and disabled do use in both communities. You're welcome.
Anybody else?
You're welcome.
Next up is the approval of the minutes from our November 10th meeting. Everybody read them over?
I'll move to approve.
I have a motion
I'll second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Next item, public hearing to rezone property from C2 Highway Commercial to I2 General Industrial.
You need a motion to open the public meeting,
Okay.
or hearing, excuse me.
I'll move to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're in public hearing. Back to you.
Is there anyone here from Green Life Properties? Or paste painting? No, okay. So, is there anyone here to discuss the rezone of the property in the corner of, what would be just north of paste painting? No. If you want to, you can make a motion to close the public hearing and we can move forward on the addressing of the application.
Motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is closed.
Okay, Paste Painting owns the property that is just south of the railroad tracks on 2nd Avenue Northeast. They operate a painting business, obviously. They have a number of materials. They have recently purchased the property just to the north of them on the other side of the railroad tracks. So it would be in the southeast corner of 2nd and Highway 2. That facility originally was going to be a storage facility for their equipment and materials, and then some other people that they currently rent to. One thing that they'd like to do is they'd like to place 10 in, it would be a large storage facility with 10 individual doors that they would rent out for commercial space. It would not be residential storage units, so it wouldn't be something that would have traffic at all hours of the day. It would be something where if there was a commercial business, let's say one that they have that rents from them is a cleaning business, they would store their cleaning equipment, trucks, etc. in that. So they had applied for a permit to do that type of a rental storage facility. We do not allow those in our highway commercial district. We only allow those in our industrial districts. So at that point in time, they had requested to rezone that property. The property just to the east of it, which is kind of an older storage facility itself, it looks more like a Quonset. That is currently zoned I-2, and the property just to the south of it on the other side of the railroad tracks is also I-2. So therefore, they asked to rezone that property I-2. So when we go through a rezone, if you look on your on your report, there's a couple of questions that we look at. Is it appropriate zoning for the property? Does it fit with our current comprehensive plan? And by comprehensive plan, that is the it says 2045 land use plan, but we did recently adopt a 2050 land use plan. Any long-range transportation plans, any other types of plans that we're looking at in terms of transportation and or land use, those types of things. And then the last one is, does it fit into the current zoning of the area? And so once we look at those three, is it appropriate zoning or is it a good fit for that property? It is. Because of the large right-of-ways on Highway 2, Business Highway 2 and 2nd, as well as the 50-foot easement that the railroad tracks have, it's very limited in what it could be used for commercially. It doesn't provide a lot of parking space. There's really, it would have to be a small office and it would have to be limited employees. There used to be an oil or a gas station there. A majority of that building and that facility did encroach on the railroad right-of-way or easement. So trying to fit it into all those pieces, they felt that that building would be a good fit for that property because it doesn't have a lot of customers. It doesn't have any staff that works there. So it really is just, in fact, a storage building. Plus, it also provides some sort of buffer from the railroad tracks. So does it fit in our current comprehensive plan? Our current comprehensive plan does show that as a commercial area. However, our 2050 plan is looking for infill spaces and filling them in with things that are good fit for those property. If you look just to the south of it, the Paste Painting building is similar in size, nature, look architecturally, as well as the Eagle Electric building just to the kitty corner, southwest. It also fits in because we have recently rezoned some of our commercial as commercial industrial, and with industrial next to it, it doesn't provide spot zoning, so it's not jumping in. So, and then again, that addresses the last question. Does it fit in with the current zoning? There is many, many industrial uses just to the east of it as well as to the southeast of it. So upon that, we've reviewed, and then it's for you to decide whether or not you'd like to rezone that property. Again, just so everyone's clear, the Planning Commission is a recommendation board. We recommend any and all of these applications to our city council. City council makes the final decision.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions? I did provide construction.
There would be no outside storage for.
There would be no outside storage. No.
Is the property fenced or not?
The property would not be fenced.
Yeah, I'm good with it. Should we vote? I'll make the motion to approve it.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye. All right.
Opposed? Motion carries. That was easy. Okay, next up, matter of approval.
Move to open the public hearing.
Okay,
I'll first it.
second, okay, public hearing is open.
Okay, this is the public hearing for the special use permit to construct and operate an asphalt plant on property recently annexed just north of County Road 17 and to the west of Highway 2. I just want to state how the public hearing is going to be run. What we'll do is we ask that if you come up and provide comment that you give your name. If you haven't signed in already, also please sign in at the back door. We will take comment first from the applicant, second from those that are here to discuss said application. Any questions that either the applicant or the residents who are here for the public hearing have of each other should be directed at the Planning Commission, and then the Planning Commission can then in fact ask the applicant and or the residences those questions if needed. Otherwise, we'll just take public comment at this point. Again, state your name into the microphone, and then after that, we can close the public hearing, and then we can address the permit as a whole. Tim, did you have something to say?
Yes, could we have a name and an address?
We can do address as well.
Thank you.
And then in the sign sheet?
And on when they come forward.
So if anybody has any questions of me, I will go ahead and sit down and we'll open it up to the applicant.
Good morning. My name is Zach Pope. I live at 1119 9th Avenue Southeast in East Grand Forks. I'm here representing RJ Zavril & Sons as the applicant. Our initial comment, I guess, we provided, working with Nancy, our additional packet with information, trying to go through some of the concerns that were brought forth previously and all that. We're here to listen. If there's any questions additional to those, to the information we provided, please let us know, and we'll try to address any of those comments or concerns. Thank you.
Jeffrey.
Morning, everybody. I think I know a lot of you, but for those of you that don't know me, I'm John Jeffrey. I live at 43125 200th Street Southwest, East Grand Forks. That's about 2.5 miles south of where the middle school is, about on County 58 there, hidden a little bit off of the county road. I'm here on behalf of Huntsville Township. I'm one of the board members of Huntsville Township. Been doing that for more than 20 years now. And just wanted to first mention, because sometimes, like before I became a rural resident, I didn't really know what the heck a township was or how all that worked. But we're the equivalent of the city governmental entity. We're governed by 3 individuals called supervisors. So I'm one of 3. Scott Boushey is the other, and Dan Zavril is the third. And in Minnesota, townships can have zoning control if they elect it, and so Huntsville Township, as far as I can remember, you know, we've always had zoning. We got our own zoning ordinance that's about so thick. It overrides the county, it overrides the city's jurisdiction 2 miles out, so, you know, we determine zoning. We control 36 square miles that's directly east of East Grand Forks that has about 500 residents, give or take. And just like you guys, we have a zoning board that is advisory that reports up to the township board. So the reason I'm here, you know, and I talk to folks all the time in public and normally don't get too nervous, but, you know, I really feel like a couple of things. One, there's a lot at stake here for the residents. Now, granted, for us, it's 5 homes really that we're talking about in the township. For the city, you know, you have that point area that's within a mile of this plant that I would think, you know, that's what the city should be worried about. But we're hoping that you also worry about those 5 families that live out in the township and that they don't get sacrificed for the sake of the plant. Also, I got to say, you know, I've known John here since, you know, he was a freshman in high school and I was a senior. I've been in Bible studies with his brother Pete. You know, I've known the Zavrils for a long time. Dan's on the board. I'm on other boards with Dan. So, you know, I'm not here to somehow say that these guys are, you know, misleading you, but the fact of the matter is that it's always hard, you know, when it's my bottom line that's being affected to be totally objective. So I know that, you know, if things go as the way, you know, Zavrils expected, everything will be fine. You know, no one's going to grow an extra lump on their shoulder. You know, the thing won't smell, and life will go on. You know, there's probably some folks that think just the opposite, that, you know, we're all going to die of cancer because of the plant. And I think the reality, you know, is probably somewhere in between. I prepared just last night, so this is why you guys get at the last minute here, but I went through the packet in detail. The handout, and Nancy, they all have this? Yeah. So the handout I gave you, it's got page sections just mostly for me because I'm getting old, but also for the commission and others to show that, you know, the information on here I didn't just pull out of the air, but it's taken right from the packet. And I think, you know, based upon these facts, we got 2 options. Option 1, of course, you know, the preferred option from the standpoint of the township and those 5 residents would be to deny the permit. Option 2, you know, as a fallback position, if you're not going to deny the permit, then, you know, option 2 would be to issue the permit for just a year and then have this process start anew next year. And I'd just like to take a minute to go through, you know, what we see as those 2 options. So option 1, you know, one of the criteria for granting the special use permit, and apparently under the city code or your zoning rules, because it's in this type of plant, that's why they have to get this, the special use permit. Is that how it goes, Nancy? I mean, it's not like every industry has to get it, but no, because these have all these issues, that this is required.
Because of the operations of a nature where it would require some additional permitting and or other factors, even in an industrial use, we do require special use permits for a majority of our uses, just so that we have the ability to address them. Very few are just permitted uses.
Okay. Okay. So that's similar, with both the township and the county. And one of the criteria is that the use, even though this is zoned industrial, the use should be compatible with the land around it. So I think the challenge here is that the annexation is technically part of the city, right? But if you look at the annexation, what happened? It's County Road 17 to the bottom. There's this little flagpole of a township or gravel road that goes north, and then at the very top of that flagpole is the 22-acre piece. So it's an island in the zoning that the township has already established. So if they came to the township and asked to work in the same spot, we would have said no because it's commercial. So they get the city to annex this little piece, run the road all the way north. To the west of that road, to the east of that road, it's township control and zone commercial. All the land to the east of that top of the flag there, excuse me, to the west of the top of the flag is zoned commercial. And then right across the road, where Alta Peters and Mr. Driscoll live, that's all zoned ag. And so we got this little island, from perspective of Huntsville, you got a little island that's going to be industrial, all surrounded by commercial or ag. And we did that intentionally in the township because we were concerned about this being developed industrial because of Crystal being, to the west. And we wanted a buffer zone for folks like Mr. Alta Peter or Driscoll's or Stable Days, to the south. And so that's why it's zoned commercial. You folks have commercial operations to the south. You got Lumber Mart, you got Burt's, you got Todd's, you got Mike Delisle. I know has contacted some of you because he bought that other chunk of land to the south with the hope that it was going to be developed commercial. So the rest of that area, would all be commercial. This would be the island of industrial that would be not only industrial, but an asphalt plant. The land is, as I mentioned, close to these folks, close to schools, that you have as the crow flies, right? It's a bit of a drive to get to the middle school or to that grade school, but if you look at a map, as the crow flies, it's about a mile. And we know, the packet's filled with wind charts that, we don't need a wind chart to know that the wind always blows around here, right? And in the summertime, sometimes out of the south, sometimes out of the north, you look at the wind chart, we don't have any control. And it's not a funnel, right? It's not like if the wind is blowing kind of this direction that the guy doesn't smell it or that direction. The wind's going to blow. Whatever it is carries, and depending upon wind speed, temperature inversions, that stuff gets up in the air and then comes down God knows where. And I think we've all experienced that. I'm way south in East Grand Forks, and a couple of times a year, I can still smell French fries being cooked over in Grand Forks. I don't know how, but somehow, that stuff gets up, it carries, it comes down. So I think that's a consideration. It's going to create problems, for the surrounding property owners with regards to dust, noise, smell. On the topic of smell, if you look to page 27, they point out, Zarvos points out, what chemicals are going to come out of this operation and what their maximums have been. And they point out that sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, volatile organic compounds, and formaldehyde, all produced by the plant. The MPCA limits on this is 50 tons, per year. Now, granted, Zarvos, say that they're not going to produce 50 tons, But if you issue a permit that's only tied to MPCA criteria, and that's the deal, then 50 tons is now the limit of production for this operation. So that's a concern. And if you look at page 51 of your handout, the MPCA points out that they don't monitor noise, dust, or smell. So they're going to keep us from inhaling stuff that's, I suppose going to cause us cancer or cause too much cancer or whatever. But they can't take care of the other things that are going to impact, whether it's the people on the point or our residents when it comes to summertime use of their property and they're outside grilling or whatever. And, Zavrils are operating 6 days a week, potentially, until 10 o'clock at night. And then the final thing that I think we should think through here is the fire hazard. That was pointed out by your own chief of the fire department. What is anticipated is between all the various hydrocarbons, so the propane, the diesel, the chemicals they need to make asphalt, you combine all those, we got 100,000 gallons of stuff that's going to blow up that's going to be on that site. That is part of industry, right? We understand that. But as a requirement, Minnesota Fire Code says that you got to have the ability to deliver 1,000 gallons of water per minute for 120 minutes. And right now, a rural fire truck carries 3,000 gallons of water, right? So you got 3 minutes covered out of 120. You got the other 117 that's going to be covered, by what is being called a dry hydrant. New term for me, but I imagine it's going to be hooked to a pump or something and then pump water out of the pond, right, if the fire department shows up. And the reason this is important is not only trying to save the guys that happen to be, involved in the fire, Zavrils employees, but also protecting your firefighters when they come on site and they got, 100,000 gallons of stuff that's going to blow up. They got to keep that stuff cool, and that's why you need the water in that pond. So if you're going to do the permit, and I guess this is kind of a segue, to option number 2, if you're going to do the permit, on the back of this sheet, we've laid out what we think would be reasonable conditions on the permit, keeping in mind that I think it's really important, whatever you do from the standpoint of conditions, that you issue this permit just for a year. So the city then isn't bound with regards to this. Zavrils come in eyes wide open, knowing that they're on a short leash. Hopefully this time next year they renew their application and nobody shows up because everything just went fine. And if that's the case, great. But if it's not, that gives you folks an opportunity to decide if there needs to be additional conditions or if the use is appropriate. And it's not like they're constructing bricks and mortar here. John told me the plant's portable. I don't know if they're still thinking of doing this, bringing the one down from Thief River and relocating it here. But contractors move these around all the time if they have another project and they need to make asphalt and they need it in close proximity to the project. The entire operation can pick up and move. So I think that revisiting this after they get a trial run here, and then at that time maybe give them a longer runway with regards to the special use permit. But don't start off with 3 years or 5 years or whatever. Just let's go through a construction season, see how that works, and then decide. And in the township, we've done the same thing on conditional use permits, because normally that's what happens. It's a he said, she said kind of thing. Everybody has their version of, whether this is going to be great or terrible. and we give them, you know, the dry run, we see how it shakes out, and then come back and revisit it, fine tune it, whatever, and then the municipal entity, you know, is basically protected. You know, nobody can claim that you told them one thing and then, you know, tried to claw it back. So 1 year, and what we would suggest with regards to dust, I don't know if this is still the game plan, but they were going to have crushing on site. You know, that is a separate problem apart from the asphalt plant. When they were going to do the plant out in the county, then they indicated that they wouldn't do crushing, so it'd be good just to clarify that, you know, the crusher's not going to be there. MPCA, in their recommendations, now these aren't requirements for MPCA, but if you look at page 51 of your handout, it suggests that the contractor keep the aggregate piles either covered or watered to avoid issues with regards to dust. Water gravel roads, cover conveyors. Those seem like a pretty low bar when it comes to dust. On the noise, also the crusher would be key there. And then limit the period of operation. So Zabrals are indicating that normally it would be May through October, and so put that as a condition. That would also address the traffic at the time of beet harvest. You got Highway 17 there. You know, during beet harvest, that is a crazy road. And then if you've got construction project going on to boot, that's going to make that even more dangerous. They indicate right now that their maximum operation has been 16 days. If you look at page 24, I've given them the benefit of the doubt, but, you know, at least put some cap on the number of days they can operate. I'm suggesting 30 so that at least the guys in the township know that there's some end in sight with regards to, you know, and it doesn't have to be 30 consecutive days, but at least they know there'll be 30 days they got to smell asphalt. And then hours of operation, you know, it seems like we should have some restriction there. And the power to the place, the city apparently can bring in electricity. That would be one less noise item. You know, get rid of the generator, bring in city electricity to the site. On the smell, if you look at page 27, Zavrals outline what they have been producing with regards to various toxins. There's 4 of them that, according to their chart, that these things have smell. Sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, volatile organic compounds, and formaldehyde. And they have the ability to measure all of these. And the numbers I put here, the 5 tons, 12 tons, 7 tons, 1.6 ton, I just looked at their chart. I looked at what they had for the maximum usage, you know, in the last 2 years, and I added a ton to that. So, you know, if the game plan is that they're going to come in and do what, you know, they've done before, then limit their production of all this stuff. They got to measure it anyway for MPCA, so it's not a burden to measure it and tell the city with regards to production. But then you got some metric, and you don't have to worry about them doing 50 tons of whatever. You know, they're going to stay within the parameters that you folks set. Also, you know, whether something smells or not, you know, that's somewhat a subjective issue, but perhaps one way to deal with that would be to have some type of measurement, you know, put one at Mr. Altapeter's location, one at Raymond's, or somewhere down in that Stable Days area, and then keep the data for a year and then see, okay, you know, these guys said it smelled on a certain day, you know, how many parts per million or billion, or I don't know how engineers measure this stuff, but, you know, they could tell you if sulfur dioxide is ending up in these guys' yard, I suppose, or all these other things. And then finally, with regards to the fire hazard, you know, they are going to have the dry hydrant. That's good. Got to make sure that not only do they got the hole that's going to hold the water, but there's water in the hole, right? And so there's, if the requirement is 1,000 gallons for 2 hours, you better have 120,000 gallons sitting in that pond. You know, it seems like that would be wise. So that's our proposal. Any questions?
I have a couple. So you mentioned crushing. Would this permit that we'd be debating on cover crushing? Or would that be a separate permit?
I had asked Zavrils if that was the case because it was on their last application, but not on ours. They are not going to be doing any concrete crushing at this site. And if they were to, they would have to come back for an additional purpose because that would be separate from this permit. So at this point in time, they are not, and they don't intend to. And if they were intending, they would again have to come back.
They'd have to reapply for a different permit then?
Yes.
Okay. Good to know.
So another question I have is the highway volume. Is that part of our conversation or not really?
ADTs on Highway 2 is quite large. It's over 12,000. This would not even make a dent. I also contacted Rich Sanders with the county engineering office. He stated that even if they went beyond the 20 trucks an hour, even if they went to 30 or even 40 trucks per hour, he said that is insignificant in what the road is classified as, which is a major collector. So they have more than enough ADT to take on their trucks. As well, they have looked at the application, and because of there maybe being some times between pre-harvest or other locations, or even just the use of County Road 17 in general, they've contacted Zavrils and they've agreed to the possibility of putting in a right-hand turn lane that would turn north onto their property. So that would remove stacking of trucks on County Road 17 and off of that through lane or that westbound lane.
I guess a couple other questions he brought up that maybe Zavrils would be best to answer. Is it going to be ran from a generator, is the understanding at the beginning of time, and then possibly changed over to electricity later?
Correct.
Okay.
Be generator until power is provided.
Yeah, within a year or two or something like that.
Yeah, we have to obtain, PKM currently is the provider there, so we would have to obtain that territory, and then we would have to go through the process of getting a permit from the Corps to run electricity through that dike that's there. We've done it before. We don't see it as an issue. We did contact the Corps in regards to both electrical and then in the piles, the aggregate piles and the retention basin, just to make sure they have no concerns as long as it's not within the toe of the dike. So we did contact the Corps in regards to electrical as well as all of the other things out there. They didn't foresee any issues with the flood control structure out there, provided that it's on their own property.
Maybe another question for Zavrils is, you guys are currently running a hot oil plant somewhere?
Yes.
How many years have you ran that?
4.
This will be our fifth.
This will be our 5th year.
How many fires have you had?
0. I don't know of any plant in the area that's had one.
I will point out that I've never had my house burned down either, but I still have homeowner's insurance.
Oh yeah, we had the elevator catch on fire 3 times in the last year next to us, so. As far as the permit goes on our aspect, this is state regulated from, they have to comply with all the emissions and all of that through the state, correct?
Absolutely. They have permits that are required of them, particularly for emissions. And I think I put them in my minutes, and they are probably better at stating which actual permits they are. I did contact the MPCA in regards to their permits. They do monitor. They do come up if there's a complaint. They also have Well, they have 14 asphalt plants alone in the Twin Cities area. Most of them are within city limits, some of them are not. They don't receive many complaints in regards to hot mix asphalt plants. Most of their complaints do come based with the mining operation. So this would not have a mining operation, so they don't have a similar type of a complaint. They also have 4 in the Bemidji area, and then there are 2 on the North Dakota side, so still monitored and permitted by the EPA, but not by the MPCA. Contacted the city of Grand Forks as well as the city of Bemidji. While theirs are outside of city limits, they are located nearby. Neither city had received any complaints on those asphalt plants.
Do you have anything else, John?
Nope.
Because there are other people who wanted to address that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one question around the annexation. Is that complete? Is that done?
The annexation was approved in March. That is complete.
Excuse me, sir. Darren, are you on a time schedule?
Good, thank you, sir.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Mr. President, I have a question of Mr. Jeffrey, if I could.
Mike? Gary has a question.
I had a question for Mr. Jeffrey. You said that you looked at this last night and wrote this up. Did you? I have to apologize. I don't have a copy of the letter because I'm not there. But was this approved by the township?
What? The letter?
The presentation that you made and those recommendations.
So the township met on Tuesday, and we agreed that we would come in and oppose the recommendation. I gave Scott Boushey a copy of this last night when I emailed it to Nancy.
Okay. Have Zavrels had any chance to respond?
No.
Okay, thank you.
But Gary, this just got posted on Friday. You know, this is the first we saw of it. So I mean, and I got a job besides. So I mean, I apologize that it came in at the last minute, but you know.
No, that's fine. I understand that. I didn't get it either, so.
Yeah, I sent it out this morning, and Gary, I did not get it sent to you by email. We did provide copies to everyone here. We have copies for the public. It will be included in the council packet as well. And then the second public hearing. So just so that everybody has an opportunity to review it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi, my name is Mike Delisle, and I am President, General Manager of Mayo Manufacturing Company. I'm not real good at public speaking, so bear with me here as far as I stumble through these words here. Had to get up here quick because I would have lost my nerve otherwise. Thanks to John Jeffrey, fabulous job there. Lots of statistics, and I'm going to echo a number of the things that he said. And I mean, as he called me out by name, I guess I have to follow up with him here. Start off by saying absolutely nothing against the Zavrel family. You're going to hear that time and time again. I grew up a block away from them as a kid. We all went through Sacred Heart together. They've been friends of mine for many years. And it's just, to me, it's kind of a shame that I'm even sort of kind of on a, I wouldn't call it adversarial, but not totally agreeing with them either. But they're been friends of mine forever. This is a business, strictly a business decision that everybody here is going to make, and I hope we still remain friends there, John. Anyway, another thing about John Zavrel, he was very forthcoming with information. I appreciate that. answered all my questions, and that's what I've been doing for the last couple months, is asking questions, asking many questions, and I think some people are probably getting sick of me. Nancy Ellis has been great on, I've emailed her many times. She's emailed me back answers each and every time, so appreciate those folks answering these questions. I realize what the city is up against here. Nearby towns have a lot of development going on, and they're under a lot of pressure, as East Grand Forks does not have a lot of development going on, at least anything I read about in the paper as of late. So recently, and there again, so stuff you could read in the paper, Crookston's got a soybean crushing plant coming in, $300 million investment, 100 jobs. Grand Forks corn refining plant, $750 million investment, 220 jobs. Recently, the Altos company, the division, the riding lawnmower division of Central Boiler in Greenbush, has announced an expansion of their riding lawnmower business into Red Lake Falls. I don't know the number of jobs there. I think I heard 60 at one time. DigiKey, of course, is legendary for the expansions that they've done the last couple of years. There again, many jobs. Well, 300 million and 100 new jobs is what my research found. So there's a lot of development going on in nearby towns the size of East Grand Forks, similar. Of course, Grand Forks is bigger. But you folks in the City Council are up against representing their constituents who are saying, how come not us? Why is this going on all around us? How come not us? And subsequently, they're looking at possibly an asphalt plant coming in as well. That's progress. We're bringing in a facility. I don't know how many jobs are going to be added. I haven't heard that number, but I can see what you're all up against. I have two concerns, and one of which is aesthetics, and that is how is this town going to look? Highway 2 is the gateway in and out of this city. As mentioned before, extremely busy highway. And is that going to hurt or help future development in this town? We do have a little skin in the game, and that is, as John noted there, last November we closed on buying 57 acres of land just to the east of our facility, out at the end of Business Highway 2, directly east of the Mayo facility, directly south of County 17, up to Highway 2, and in back of some of the businesses like Wirtz Truck Equipment on the south. We made that investment. We spent about $660,000 to buy that land. We don't need that land for our own purposes. We already have 11 acres out there. We have been expanding as time has gone on here, including just in the last couple of years, but we've got plenty of land for our own expansion. We bought that land because we wanted to have some control over it and promote expansion, companies coming to town, jobs coming to town. And the proposed asphalt plant is going to be directly to the north of that, within actually their road coming out of there with the trucks will be literally across the street from it. Now I'm bringing up questions here. I don't have a lot of answers, so I'm bringing up the concerns. My other concern has to do, it's a safety concern, and I think that John mentioned this already, and it's an unknown. I'm bringing up the concern. The smoke and the dust, and I know that a lot of precautions are going to be taken by the Zarbo group on how to keep that down to a minimum, but adjoining Highway 2, there again, an extremely busy highway and not one with a great record from an accident standpoint over the years, and in fact a fatality a few years ago on the corner of 17 and Highway 2. These folks are running this plant from 6 in the morning until 10 at night. And I don't know the answer to this, but dust and smoke blowing across Highway 2, prevailing winds coming from the north-northwest, pushing that smoke and dust across Highway 2. Perhaps the Minnesota Department of Transportation has already addressed this. I don't know that either. But it's a concern I have. And those hours of operation are going to get into August and September. You're going to lose the daylight there. And so now we have the dusk to dawn. As it starts getting dark or starts getting light, potential for dust and smoke to be blown across Highway 2 at that point. I'm frankly worried about that. From all the questions I've been asking and pestering a lot of people about over the last couple of months, there's been a lot of good answers. But the fact of the matter is there's a lot of unknowns, and the science involved, I have no idea what goes on there. It's all opinion. I hear stories about toxic in the air, smell, all those things. That's. I was hoping for an environmental impact assessment to be done. I asked the Zavrals about one, and I asked Mayor Gander about one, and I asked Mark Olstead about one. Mayor Gander and Mark Olstead both indicated to me that they thought it was a good idea. To my knowledge, one hasn't been done. I thought a third-party assessment on that order, providing that information, get the science behind it, boy, it could very well bolster the Zavral's position. There again, being third party and arbitrary, I was hoping something like that would have come about. In conclusion, I'm going to ask, just as John Jeffrey did, one of the options there, I'm going to ask that the permit have the condition to it that it is be reviewed after 1 year. And all of these unknowns and all these opinions and everything else, after a season, come the fall there, into the winter, everybody will have a lot better of an idea what the effects of the plant are. So, thank you. Any questions?
Hi, I'm Jenna Jorgensen. I live at 17704 Foreshore 9th Avenue Southwest, East Grand Forks. That would be within I'm one of the 5 houses of this proposed asphalt plant. So I do have some concerns. Of course, the noise, the trucks, it was stated 30 to 40 trucks an hour, which is fine for the highways, but for a resident who lives right there, 30 to 40 trucks an hour all summer long is a lot. I know the asphalt plant, of course, would be the highest when it's hot outside and it's nice outside. And for the residents who live right there, I have a 2-year-old that we would be spending a lot of time out summer, so that of course is a concern for me. And then a question for the Zavrals, the Thief River Falls asphalt plant that they said that they've had for about 5 years. What is the closest house to that is my question. Put yourselves in our shoes. We are very concerned for all these reasons. I meant, if you were in our shoes, you can't tell me you'd be supporting this 1,000% if you were in our shoes. And then I am 32 years old, and I bought this. It will be 6 years in August since we've been out there. And of course, I love where I live. We have 2.5 acres by the river. But of course, a concern is the resale value. Would you want to buy my house in 2 years when this asphalt plant is up and running full speed in the summer? And if you know that, would you want to come and buy my house? That is a concern for me, along with the noise and, of course, the health reasons, but everybody's concerned about that. So, in conclusion, respectively, this Highway 2 project last summer was done successfully without an asphalt plant on the corner of Highway 2. So I'm not saying, to expand your business, that's great. And yes, Zavrals are well known in East Grand Forks, but there has to be a better place for it than technically within city land, city property. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rob Raymond. I live at 17702 429th Avenue Southwest. I'm Jenna's neighbor, also a neighbor with the Stable Days. A few things. We went through all of this last year with the county. They wanted this proposed plant down towards the Mallory corner. It was basically denied unanimously. A lot of reasons. One reason that I remember being is the bean plant, saying that the odor of asphalt is so bad it can leach into steel shipping containers, which would deem their product junk. They could lose possibly, I believe they said, millions of dollars a day. That's going through a steel shipping container. Now, when John mentioned some of the chemicals that are in asphalt, and somebody said, well, they don't necessarily smell. Well, I tell you what, look up benzene, chromium, formaldehyde, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, cadmium, arsenic. Even if they don't smell, read what the health effects can be of all of these combined. You know, if you want to compare this to American Crystal Sugar or Simplot or anything like that, you got potatoes and beets. They're natural. None of this stuff I just mentioned, none of these chemicals are in beets or potatoes. They talked about that packet not being misleading. I think there are some things in the packet that are a little misleading. You know, they went and got these endorsement letters, well, not only from people on business too, but also trying to get endorsement letters from some of the businesses around the OP asphalt plant on Gateway Drive. I tried to call one of those businesses. It wasn't even a working number. I have since been told a lot of these people didn't even know what that was about. The Chamber of Commerce. Whoa, go figure. They endorsed this. We called them to ask about it. Hung up on us. Also, you look at the wind charts. If it wouldn't have been for last year's drought and extremely high temperatures, I mean, it was miserable. A lot of our winds were coming from the south. If you would have thrown last year's wind chart out of this, we all know better. The wind predominantly comes from the northwest. Well, our houses are directly south of this proposed plant. Another thing, when we talk about property values, well, they claim that the property values will not go down, but they are also, they're basing this on tax values. Well, we all got the letters in the mail here recently telling you what your tax value is, and of course they're lower than what you would be able to get for your house. So you can't base it on tax values. I think that's totally wrong. You talked about the fire department. They would classify this as an H2 or an H3, which is highly hazardous. Now, from the research I've done, we're talking over 102,000 gallons of flammable stuff that's going to be on this site at all times. So, I mean, let's face it, summer here, I mean, is it already done for the year or is it still coming? Our summers are too short. The time we have to enjoy outside on our deck is too short. It's way too short to have to smell this, have to listen to all the traffic. I mean, there's a difference between cars going down Highway 2. At my house, I've got a nice tree line separating Highway 2 from my property. In the summer, it's great. The trees are full. It acts as almost like a sound barrier. The only thing you hear are the trains and trucks. You don't hear the cars. It's a whole different deal. When you look, and this surprises me because the city council had a lot of information that was given to them about the health effects and the dangers of these chemicals. I don't know if any of them read them. The way they pushed the annexation through, I'm guessing maybe they did not. But I am not going to say let's give them a year. You got to remember, when they talk about things being regulated, not everything is regulated. Noise, smell, soot. A lot of these toxins are not regulated or monitored. If something does not fall into what they say is correct, they'll come and help you get through it. They won't just shut you down. They'll come and help you get through it and see what it takes to make this in compliance. How long would that take? Is it going to be a done deal overnight? I highly doubt it. My recommendation is to just say no. We went through this once before in the county. There was obvious reasons why it got unanimously voted down, and I think it should be that way too. I have nothing against the Zabrals. They're a great business. They've been around forever. They've done a ton for East Grand Forks. I bought my place out there for a reason. I wanted to be out of town, just far enough to be out of town, enjoy what I have. Got nice riverside property. We have wildlife running around the yard all the time. I don't need this odor. I just don't need it. And I think a lot of people feel this way. We are prepared to fight this all the way to the end. We've got mailers going out to basically almost every resident in East Grand Forks. We're just asking that they find somewhere else to put this plant. And thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Laura Raymond. I'm Rob Raymond's wife, so it's the same address. I just wanted to bring up one point that he forgot to mention. We're not just making all of this stuff up. I've been researching this. I have contacted the MPCA, the EPA, FEMA. I've contacted experts. I've been reading tons of research articles on the toxins, specifically of these asphalt plants. And he's gone over all of this. Most people are pretty much familiar with all of this. But the one thing that I don't think people do understand, and I did get this from the MPCA, they do not monitor combined emissions. So this being right next to Crystal Sugar, the two plants together can exceed what would be considered a limit. But both of them, as long as they're both in compliance, that would be accepted. So we will be facing twice the amount, considering it'll be from Crystal Sugar and from the asphalt plant. They will both be going into the air at the same time. So we'll be having twice the smell, twice the toxins. Any of the hazards that are associated with one can be doubled. But as long as they're both in compliance, that will be accepted, it will be fine, and there's nothing that they will do about it. And as Rob was saying, when there is, and we don't expect that they would ever be out of compliance. We're totally believe that they will do their best to stay in compliance and do whatever is right. But if they aren't, if there are complaints and they aren't, MPCA, they come out and they work with them to try to help them get into compliance, and that's what Rob was talking about. It's very, very seldom that they would ever be fined. It has to be a very deliberate, ongoing problem before they would be fined. And so even though they can say that, they're going to follow the MPCA guidelines or the EPA guidelines, and that's fine, but that really doesn't help us when it comes out to what the actual effects are. The smell is still going to be there. The noise is still going to be there. People get sick from this, nauseating headaches, respiratory problems. The list goes on. And that happens from plants that are in compliance. And so, them doing everything they can do correctly, when we have no doubt that they would try to do that, that doesn't mean it's going to minimize the problems. But then, even if they had a permit for a year, even if these problems, we face the problems, but if they're in compliance, then you have no reason to not extend it for indefinitely, but those problems are still going to be there. So I just wanted to clarify those few things.
Good afternoon. My name is Ben Lester, Stable Days Youth Ranch, 17721 429th Avenue Southwest, and East Grand Forks here. Thanks for hearing us today. I'd like to start out by quoting a verse from the Bible that says, "To him who has been given much, much will be expected." And I think that Zavarals have demonstrated over the years that they're great citizens. I think it's really an issue of stewardship. Stewardship meaning that they've taken the resources that they've had and built successful businesses. They employ great employment opportunities. I've been inside their facilities here in East Grand Forks. They're fantastic, safe, all the things that you'd expect of an operation of that scale. They're obviously, as been noted, they're generous in the community, very supportive of many different activities and institutions here, which is fantastic. They seem to be very conscientious in the way that they conduct their business, which again is all we could ask. So, but again, stewardship. So what does that talk about? That has to do with the good of all, right? So they're a business. They are a for-profit organization, unlike us, that we're being a nonprofit. Stress the non. I just want to focus on that a little bit. So in my experience over the years in business, I've had the opportunity to visit asphalt plants around the country. And I can tell you that as you get close to an asphalt plant, nobody has to tell you that you're getting close to an asphalt plant. You can smell it from a long ways away. I would say well beyond 5 miles in my own personal experience. A couple of concerns that I have relative to the impact on the surrounding roads, whether it be 17 or 2 there, is the exiting trucks coming onto those roadways are going to be carrying mud and also residue from the asphalt plant. Okay, it's just a natural occurrence. What is that going to create in terms of safety issues, especially in those intersections there? As was pointed out, those have been prone to accidents, and we're very thankful for the reworking of the intersection right over by Business 2 there at Burt's and whatnot. I think that's been a great thing that'll help to reduce or mitigate the safety factors there. But anyway. So that's one point of contention or a concern that we have. And I think that, the question was raised too by Jenna, our neighbor. If the Zavarals lived where we live, would they want this plant built there? I highly doubt it. So often in life, it's easy to say, well, that's happening somewhere else. That doesn't really affect us. And, it's easy to just kind of be dismissive in these things. So we would just ask that there be a consideration for the few. 5 houses. I mean, what's that? 5 houses. That's not much. That's 5 families. I'd like to point out that at Stable Days Youth Ranch, we host hundreds of kids and families every year that come out to our facility for outdoor activities. So if you've got an asphalt plant and the winds are blowing, all that stuff that's coming from that asphalt plant is going directly through our property. And I, for one, don't want myself or my family to be exposed to that. I certainly don't want our visitors to be exposed to that. And they come from all over the region, our animals, so on and so forth. So that's a consideration. We've been there for 10 years, a little over 10 years now, and we enjoy it out there. In fact, it's amazing. Our property is actually transformed from a riverside property to a lakeside property now. So if you want to see the what that looks like, come on out. We'll show you. Mr. Jeffries mentioned in his plan, I really appreciate, John, what you had to present there. It was very enlightening. I think that my contention would be with his second option of a 1-year try before you buy plan is, look, at 1 year, there's a lot of momentum going. They're up and running, things are going and chugging along. The engines of industry are well oiled, and so are the roads around it and stuff. So, You know, I just would say that it would be hard to throttle back and to say, you know, this isn't working out, you know, to the best of the community and everybody's interest. Let's shut her down and do something else. So I would be highly doubtful that that plan would ever happen. So again, for that reason, I would have to continue to contest this and say no. So with that, I would say, you know, for every no, do you have an option, a contingency plan? So I would suggest that there's lots and lots of land. We're blessed with lots of land out here. There are likely many, many other locations in the not too distant reaches here where a plant could be set up where there's really no exposure to families or certainly minimal traffic concerns, county roads that have far less traffic than the area that we're talking about here. So that's it. I just wanted to have the opportunity to share our thoughts and appreciate any questions at all. If not, thanks for your time.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Gary Shields. I am an ESOP owner of Central Bag Company. I am right next door to Anchor Manufacturing, which is right across the street from Mayo Manufacturing. To a point also, I'm also a partner with two other gentlemen that purchased the Eagles Club in East Grand Forks. It's not a financial investment to gain, it's an angel investment. We did it to save the club. I only bring that up because my heart and soul are with East Grand Forks. And in the last 2 years, I've been working with economic development and other council members to promote East Grand Forks in a positive way. So I'm here hopefully to say some positive things. One question I would have for the council to ask for clarification to the Zavarals, who I sincerely respect, is when they did their report, they went out to different businesses, and I contacted all of the folks that signed the letters, incidentally, up to this morning. They made a comparison to the op plant. A question that I would have to be asked to the Zavarals is exactly what is going to be put there. Will the plant that's in Thief River in its entirety be brought? Will parts be brought? If they could just tell us real quick now before I proceed, if that's okay, exactly the comparison to the op plant with emissions. Is it apples to apples, or are they going to bring that plant down as is and then improve it from there? That would be a question if we could.
The plant itself, whether it's that plant or a similar plant, the entire facility would have to come as one. Obviously, as an asphalt plant, you need all the pieces and parts, conveyors, feeder bends, but it'd be similar in mind, yeah. So it'd be similar to have a bag house for the particulate matter to be collected in it and so forth, so, yes.
Just real quick. So I guess my question is and to be asked back is, will the plant from Thief River Falls in its entirety be brought to this location? Will there be a possibility that any of the materials from the existing plant in Thief River Falls be brought to this facility?
Could be a possibility.
Okay, so for clarification, I believe Mr. Delisle brought up the point that there's an existing plant in Thief River Falls. I have viewed that plant, and it is a pretty outdated looking structure. We have photos of it. I don't want to present them at this time. But I think whether it's trying to help or whatever, that's part of the problem that some of the folks in the community have is what's going to land there. If we're asking people from Happy Harry's and Casey's, which in the packet they have, how do you feel about this plant that's run over by you? I don't know that that's a fair comparison. You know, one car's different than another, different plants are different. So I think that still needs to be answered before the planning and zoning and the council can make their decision, because you don't know, they don't know what's going to go there yet. So we have pictures in the packets that eloquently show that, these are different plants, has no bearing on what's going to be on this footprint. For the sake of time, I'll move on. I think that addresses everything regarding the old plant. They're not really sure. The other question is will this operation, if it's approved, start in May? Oh, I'm sorry. When will this plant start operating once it's approved?
Don't know. Early summer, maybe.
Okay, so right now they don't know what they're going to put on the property. They're not really sure if they're going to start in May. So those are things that next week the council can't make a decision. I know Mr. Helms is here, and I believe Mr. DeMers here, but I believe he's excluded from the decision process. But the council cannot make a decision based on they not knowing, respectfully, the Zavrals not knowing what they're going to put there, because they don't know what to vote on. I think that's a fair statement. If I was going to build a facility in East Grand Forks, you would want to know what's going on that footprint. And I think a great example of that is what we just saw with the painting company. You want to know what's going to go there. Randy, you asked some specific questions. Going to be fencing around it? Would a facility like this have fencing around it? That's a rhetorical question. But things that have to be known before you can make a vote, I believe. I did speak to pretty much everybody that wrote letters, and I want to talk about two in particular. I'm right across the street from Mayo Manufacturing, and Nancy, who is very kind to take the calls, explained to me that, I believe it's under code, that you only need to send letters to people that are within 350 feet of the footprint. Nancy, is that correct?
That is where we send neighbor letters. We also did publish it in the city's official paper 2 consecutive Wednesdays.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yes.
So I'm right across the street from Mayo Manufacturing. Mike got a letter because he's there. I'm at Central Bag, Anchor. None of us got letters because Nancy was very clear that we're way beyond the 350 feet. So I spoke to a business behind me this morning, and the gentleman said, yeah, I signed the letter. I was in a conversation with John, and we got to talking, and yeah, I signed it. So I went on to explain my situation. Being in the packaging business, food grade facility, concerned about taking on odor. And he said, I never thought of that. He said, this was just a casual conversation. I signed the letter. So as I got into more details, it got me thinking. So I reached out to another business next door, talked to a young man, family business. And as we were speaking, he said, I got into a little bit of trouble for signing this letter because we wanted to remain neutral, but I signed it. And it's no need to get into who the business is, but I can verify it so you know that this is true conversation. And he went on to say that we need growth. I had a council member tell me this is a win-win. We're making more money. We need to grow. We need money. Quote unquote, this is a win-win. Yeah, I know we need more money in the East Grand Forks community. Nobody's out promoting it more than I am right now, I believe, in my mind, meeting with David Murphy and others to really get the chamber to give us our value in this community. We are a food grade facility. We are a certified food grade facility. I believe Anchor Mart Packaging is a food grade facility. They bulk load outside. I spoke with a council member yesterday that represents our ward, or day before yesterday, and expressed a concern about a pollution problem we're having right now. And the gentleman that's next door to me reiterated the same thing. Filters don't get clean, that chafe is flying all over the place. We've got a problem out there. But it doesn't go noticed. Suggestions are made, but there's no response. So I guess I agree with the 1 year. But my biggest concern is we don't even know what's going there. So I don't think you can make a decision today based on that. And I believe the council next week can't make a decision until there's an actual, this is just my personal feelings, that until we see an actual rendering, until respectfully the Zavrals can say, yes, We are bringing it down. I believe the gentleman indicated we don't know yet. So maybe this year is a bit aggressive. And I would propose that through all of the businesses and individuals that I have taken the time collaboratively to meet with, be given a chance to see all that. Final thing, wind. You'll smell whether you don't have wind or not, but I do want you to know that I did drive over to the meteorological center across University Avenue 2 days ago, and I visited with them about the Iowa Rose slides. And we talked for over an hour. It was very educating to me. And one thing I noticed, if you look at the two slides, the first slide covers 5 years. The second slide covers last summer. John addressed this a little bit. But I would suggest to the council to go back and look at those two slides. Then go to the Iowa Rose site, which I have done, since their inception, since 1972 to date. All you have to do is click in the parameters. And the gentleman I spoke with agreed with me that the prevailing winds, despite how anybody wants to paint the picture, are from the north-northwest. Yes, in the summer they can be predominant. But if you go to that chart I referenced in May, still dominant north winds. I'm not saying that there was manipulation there when you look at those two charts, but if you take the time to look at the dates, somehow I feel with these letters that were signed and how this was laid out, it's like we're trying to be sold on something. And if you're going to sell, you need to be honest, you need to be forthright, you need to keep your graphs the same so that they're comparative. And I do thank you for your valued time. Any questions, gentlemen?
I have one.
Yes, sir, Randy.
Does it make a difference if Zavrel's were moving the old existing plant from Thief River, or if it was a brand new facility?
Yeah, that's a great question, Randy, and that's come up in a lot of questions, and thank you for bringing that up. I think Mr. Delisle addressed aesthetics. I think one thing that East Grand Forks is trying to do, as people coming in and out of our community, we want to showcase it. It's just be kind of nice to know what's it going to look like? Is it going to be that old plant? And if it is going to be that old plant, we're comparing it with another plant, are we comparing potatoes with potatoes? That's a concern. That's a concern. And it's a legitimate concern. I hope I've answered your question, Randy, but... So
you would be more inclined that the new plant would be more...
I would be inclined to be reassured that what the wonderful lady spoke, John's wife spoke, who I just met literally today, that it's not what you see, it's the unseen. It's standing in an array of light when someone's talking to you and realizing, I never knew that much spit came towards my face. We've all seen it. It's the unseen. And I think that we have to be careful so that we don't become part of this, what's going on in Grand Forks right now, where no one wants to see this corn milling plant come in because they're just hyper freaked out. That's not the case. We're real people. We have real concerns. And I think your biggest concern today is that you don't know what you're going to have put on that property. Thank you very much.
Hello. My name is Roger Altapeter. I'm from 42928 170th Street Southwest, East Grand Forks. I live less than a half a mile from where this proposed site is going to be, and I'm downwind, so it's really a concern of mine. With the winds can vary so much, 20, 30, 40 miles an hour. It will be in my yard in a matter of minutes, so.
Sir, could you get a little closer to the mic?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Marta here.
Did you hear me okay? Okay. But that's a real concern. The devaluation of our property on the internet, it says can be down half. after being too close to a asphalt plant. Another thing, being less than a half a mile away, on the internet it says that 3 to 3.5 kilometers aerial distance, which is a little over 2 miles, is the closest you should be. So I'm far too close. Has that been considered or what?
Sir, can you state where you're finding this information on the internet? Was it on the MPCA or EPA's website, or is it just an article on?
Well, here it is here. I printed this one off.
Perfect.
I've seen it many, many times, but I just feel I'm too close. There isn't really anything in this for us residents. It's just bad news.
Okay, this study is prepared, was written in Arabic and prepared by a committee team formed by the president of Birzeit University, which I'm unclear where that is, but just so you're aware of where the information's from.
It's been different spots it's been on. That's just, it always comes up with the same distance. Anyway, I feel it's much too close. Anything that happens at the asphalt plant's going to be in my yard in a little bit. And also the truck traffic. I don't know if they plan on, if you're talking 30 trucks an hour, are they going to go down 17? Or are they going to turn on Highway 2, or where are they going? Because that's just too much. When the beat campaign starts in the fall, now with all these semis, they start their engine brakes a mile down the road, and you can hardly be in my yard because it's just constant. And they'll run the engine brake right to the stop sign. It's annoying. It's just all day long. So that's what I wanted to say. I'm not for this plant at all. It's just bad news for me. Okay. Any questions? Or?
State your opinion, Roger.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Darren Shimke. I reside at 18876 424th Avenue Southwest, East Grand Forks. Mr. Commissioner, members of the Commission, I rise in opposition of the special use permit. My reasons for the opposition are based on what I learned last year. And with my research, I found a number of things that I felt were not in the best interest of residents surrounding such a plant, and also the environment. I'm not going to dwell into it so much because so much has been said already that I certainly agree with. But specifically, the air pollution. There are studies show that an asphalt plant that is located within a valley, as an example, a river valley with high humidity, certain times of the day that humidity banks down the particles at a much quicker rate. And those particles then are embedded in the ground. And what I don't know, and I could not find an answer, to be perfectly honest with you, last year, was what that does when you go over those particles with a lawnmower, or what it does to your shingles, and that's siding, and that sort of thing. I don't have an answer to that. The groundwater, the leaching of, we talked earlier about fire danger, and that's certainly a concern. But the hazardous materials that are stored there, and the potential leaching into the groundwater, close proximity to the river, does concern me. Now I know that there's preparation that can be made to the ground to eliminate that, but those techniques don't last forever. And leaching chemicals are detected decades after a plant, not an asphalt plant, but any type of industry has left that particular property. You know, the odor. The odor is something that's not regulated, but yet the speakers have stated that it's detectable. You know, I happen to work. I believe I measured this out last year. My distance might be off a bit, but I believe it was 0.6 of a mile south, and the plant itself is about 0.8 of a mile west of me. Not as the bird, obviously, by road. When the right conditions are there, that odor is noticed to us at work. It does permeate into the building, and it does, on those specific days, leave a noticeable film on our vehicles when we go out in the morning. There's no denying that. Real estate values, the studies I read last year were 54% within 5 miles. 54% decrease in residential, not taxable value, but market value. Thank you. Sorry. You know, the things that are emitted, what I also learned last year was people with asthma. And that one particularly, you know, kind of hit close to home. My son has asthma, and if these things are breathed in, there's a potential for increased incidences of asthma attacks. I'm not, you know, a lot of things have been said, and I agree with them all. And I respectfully request that you deny the special use permit for myself and my family. And I said last spring, let's implore you to do the right thing and listen to what people say, because their voices just want to be heard. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Anybody else? If not, I have a couple. Nancy, in your communication, you said there were 3 permits that need to be required, or non-metallic mining associated activities general permit, national pollutant discharge elimination system permit, and an area emissions registration permit.
Yes, if I'm not mistaken, and I know, Zach, you can help. Yes. Two are with the MPCA and one is with the EPA?
The EPA. That is correct. The 3, they're stormwater-based and mining-based. The non-metallic one is a mining-based, but you still need to have it even if you're not mining on site to have an asphalt plant on site. That is for our overall operation. We have that active. If this site were to be approved, we would have to go through the process of adding this site to it by submitting a alteration form with the state. The air permit, we do also hold a current air permit, and then the construction stormwater permit would have to be specific for this site if it happened.
Thank you. I have a question for you.
Yep.
If you were to put the old plant that you exist now there versus new, is there any difference of emissions?
I would defer that to...
No.
But, yeah.
So they're all the same?
Yes, it's the bag house that controls all the emissions.
So they ain't the new improved version out there or nothing?
Not two chimneys.
And just so you're clear, what you see is not smoke, it's steam that would come out of a stack. So we do have their plant manager on site. If you're unfamiliar with how an asphalt plant works, I tried to explain it in my general layman's terms because I was unfamiliar with the process of asphalt. I was also unfamiliar with what's stored outside, what's stored within tanks. Obviously, the hazardous materials are stored in tanks. The aggregate piles are things like sand, gravel, recycled asphalt. Those would be watered down just to control the dust, but again, not hazardous if it was sitting on a contractor's yard.
So this plant would be very similar to the two that are operating in Grand Forks?
Correct. Ops operation is small. Strata has a fairly large operation, and that's located on the other side of I-29, just behind the truck stop in that general area.
Where their home terminal is?
Yep.
So do either of them plants operate with a permit that's renewable?
No. Grand Forks does not do a renewable permit. I also contacted the city of Grand Forks, talked to both their, I talked to their city planning office, as well as I was referred down to their information center. They had not received any complaints on either asphalt plant. As far as monitoring those plants from a city standpoint, they do not. They refer back to those agencies that require the permits for emissions and stormwater and those types of things. We, however, would be monitoring stormwater because we do have our own stormwater team. So stormwater would be reviewed, as well as fire code. John Jeffrey brought that up. That was put in your packet in November to be addressed, because fire protection is something that's required once it's annexed into the city. So Jeff Boushey, our fire chief, has been in contact with Zavros, and obviously that would be one requirement. It's not something that we have to state on the permit, because we're required to, within the city limits, follow fire code for any such building that we have. So they would be required to include the dry hydrant and the water retention plant to meet whatever needs they need if there were a fire in place. And that would be something that Jeff would go out and routinely monitor to make sure that that basin was full of water. But again, that is, much like the emissions permit, those types of things, there are requirements and regulations for that. So therefore, they will have to meet those.
I see Jeff's in the back. Would you like to weigh in on this at all? Sure. We don't want you to sit back there quietly all day.
I invited him.
Perfect.
Put on your siren. Huh?
Yes, thank you. My name is Jeff Boushey, Fire Chief in East Grand Forks, and my responsibility here is to assist the businesses in this community with code compliance, specifically Minnesota State Fire Code, and then ultimately ensure that they are compliant. And we treat every business, existing and new, the same. And I worked with Mr. Bopp. He shared with me the products that would be on this site, and based off that is the findings we came up with. Any questions for me?
Chief, do you think this memo that you wrote, the minimum fire flow would require 100,000 gallons per minute?
That's what the state fire code
That's
asks.
minimum.
Yes.
You got over 100,000 gallons of flammable liquid, propane, combustible liquid, so forth and so on.
Yes.
You're happy with the minimum?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
On that same thing, gentlemen, what is AC fuel? AC oil?
This is Jeff Brooks. He will be their plant manager, so.
AC oil is asphalt cement. It's a bitumen. It's a byproduct of petroleum. And that's what we use in the, kind of holds the mix together.
What's the TAC oil then?
TAC. TAC is an emulsifier we put on the road. It cleans off the road. Doesn't, big misconception there, since it's a little sticky, is that it works as glue, but it doesn't. It just kind of cleans the surface.
Burn.
TAC's cut with water, so it wouldn't be very highly flammable, no. AC is combustible at 350 degrees or something of that nature. It's very high.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else?
in this permit, you could put restrictions for the hours of service, the days of service, things of that nature. So if you wanted to exclude weekends, we could exclude weekends on it. Their request was for Saturdays.
Yes, you could put that on as a condition.
Is there such thing as like a blue law day that, you know, hey, it's the 4th of July, it lands on a Thursday, they can't run it on a holiday?
We have recommended hours of operation for construction projects. What those are 7 to 10, Monday through Fridays, and 9 to 9 on Saturdays. We do not allow construction on Sundays within city limits when there's road projects or other type of construction.
Did I address that just on our past?
Yes, yes.
Our past 5-year performance, we've never worked on the holidays. So.
Okay. Can't get any employees to work during the normal
Well,
weeks.
a lot of the state restrictions are to be off the highways for the asphalt, you know, for the holidays. So it's,
Is like the hot road oils that it has hazardous material that's being transported then?
would it be
Yeah.
on the holidays or?
No, is asphalt.
Every day is defined as a hazmat material?
Yes.
Oh.
Is the asphalt hazmat material?
No.
No, it is
No,
not.
I was.
No hazmat.
Oh, I thought you
It's
said.
not a hazmat material.
Oh,
No.
it is not.
Transport, it is not.
Oh, okay.
Anything else, anybody?
It was a lot easier walking in here than now, because we heard a lot of people that have a lot of concerns that, you know, and if you live in the closer zone, it's not an easy decision for anybody, you know. And I think Zavrals will run into any trouble anywhere they petition for a permit for this type of nature of a plant. Their map.
I just want to be clear that we're still in the public hearing process, so we don't want to make any decisions until we close the public hearing if you feel like you're ready to start discussing the actual permit process.
So I have one question for Zavrals on their information when you had a wind chart that showed up. Was there a scale for distance related to that? So like this one, is this any representation of distance?
The scale of the windrows itself, you're questioning, or the of the map
Yeah,
in general?
how far would that permeate from the plant?
There's no study on how far the particles of the steam would permeate from the plant. It's based on many weather conditions, obviously, that would go along with it. The windrows just shows the intensity and direction. And the time periods that were established for this,
Basically frequency
we're just
and
trying to establish. It was I just picked 2 periods to try to show a representative of just summertime hours when our plant is in operation, and then the last 5 years just to show a general how it is. And there's not a lot of difference between the two. So, and then I just obviously with that one on figure 6.1 to show how it represents on our site.
Probably no different than Simplot or American Crystal. You can smell it some days 5 miles away and some days right next to it.
Yeah, yeah, the information's from the Grand Forks Airport, so weather station, so it would be similar weather. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can you talk to the, what are the local residents talked about, I don't know the right word, the fallout, so to speak, the experience of a layer of dust on the cars and things that could speak to that a little bit? What should or shouldn't be expected?
If I could, Chad, I would appreciate it if Jeff would be able to speak on the plant itself and the operation of that. Thank you.
Jeff Brooks. Yeah, the dust is more, I think that's coming from truck traffic. It's nothing's coming out the stack and, floating to the point of, as a solid anyways. So I think a lot of the dust particles and stuff and mining is a big thing where you get a lot of dusting, floating particles and whatever else. So I think if someone's getting a film, it's coming from truck traffic and things of that nature that are kicking up solids. There shouldn't be any floating materials. It should be sucked in through the bag house, and then at that point it shouldn't be floating. So
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else?
Meeting, public hearing be closed?
Second.
Have a motion, second, to close the public hearing, all in favor?
Aye.
Hearing is closed.
I'm not going to go into great detail on my report. Everyone provided a lot of information. Everybody's been given the supplemental information. I've tried to do my due diligence just to understand how an asphalt plant works. And I thought I explained that in generic terms in there. Some of the things that I think we as a planning commission or as a city council or even as a city employee can address. We can address odor or smell in the terms of, can you smell it? Does it bother you? We have no monitoring equipment. The same with emissions. We do rely heavily on, as most local agencies or even county agencies, we rely on those requirements and regulations that are submitted to us by those types of entities that write the rules for it. MPCA works on pollution. They are pollution control. They are a stricter they have stricter regulations than the EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency. There's nothing to say that they are preventing smells or noise or odor or emissions, because they don't do that. They don't come out with a zero emission. I'm unaware of any zero emission type of regulations, at least in this area or the types of projects that we have. However, I do feel that their regulations alone and the monitoring that is required of them, as well as the asphalt plant itself has to submit those emissions every year to the MPCA. The MPCA reviews them. Yes, we wouldn't know it's a problem until it's a problem. But again, they don't necessarily have a number of stackable violations of asphalt plants in the state of Minnesota that I could find or that they would provide to me. That's not to say that they aren't there. So when we look at a permit and applying a special use permit, we look at, is it a fit for the area? Is it not? If it is a fit and we want to approve, we have to have reasons why, and then we have to address those conditions that we could actively enforce. So if there's a dust issue, that make sure that they're watering down aggregate piles that may blow, water down the roads if they're gravel, those types of things. Traffic, I have gone into great detail with both the MnDOT engineer and the county engineer. The amount of traffic that they are going to be bringing to the area is not significant. If you look at a 16-hour time period, which is what they're proposing from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. at night, at the max, I even put 35 trucks, which they are not. They have never maxed out at 35 trucks. If it's 30 trucks, it's one every 2 minutes. It approximates at about 560 trucks in a 16-hour period. That is very minimal. We have more traffic than that in a 15-minute, well, half-hour time period on Bigland Road in the mornings. So, and that's over the course of 16 hours. It's not truck traffic per se, but the truck traffic itself, one every 2 minutes, is not substantial. The county roads are designed and they're classified that way so they can take on that type of traffic. The amount of traffic that's on Highway 2, right around even some of our intersections, is around 12,000 vehicles per day. This would not even add a small dent to it. Plus, the other thing that we have to keep in mind is that the operation is not from the middle of May till October, running 6 to 10 every day for 6 days a week for those 5 months. So that was another thing that wasn't clear to me, but you operate when you're making asphalt. If you don't need asphalt, you're not in operation. So it's very different than any other type of manufacturing plant in that nature. I did contact UND. They recently built a medical facility that is across the street from Op Construction. Faculty, staff, visitors, students. They have not received a complaint about the asphalt plant in operation, no complaints about dust on their cars, nothing to that nature. I also did contact Crystal Sugar because of the concern with the food processing, outdoor storage of beets, etc. I visited with Lloyd Kennedy, who is the plant manager. He also discussed this with their corporate office, so that it wasn't just a local decision, it was also a corporate decision. They do not feel that it will have any impact on their property, have any impact on their operation, have any impact on their storage piles. They also have hazardous materials on site that they store in tanks similar to what they have. They also do produce some emissions. Just so you're aware, if you're looking at apples to apples, there is other hazardous sites. That's where you put them, is in industrial type nature, areas. So that they're all kind of in the same area. To address the commercial property, I do agree with Mr. Jeffrey. They did zone that commercial. That township did do that. They are within our territorial area where we did look at it as on our land use plan for future development. We have classified that area as industrial because it is, what would the word I be? It's quite near our industrial park and would be adjoining to our industrial park if those properties were ever to be annexed. Crystal Sugar does own a lot of that property just to the west of them, and Crystal Sugar would be using it for an industrial nature. So those are kind of some of the things that I looked at to address. If we do make a recommendation, and it's again a recommendation to the council makes the final decision. We do have the opportunity for everybody to provide comment again to the city council. However, we will try to summarize all comments today, put that in their RCA or their request for council action, so that the council has all of the information and all of the stuff presented today from these residents of Huntsville Township or even within city limits. So just so we're clear, this meeting was also televised so that it's on our city channel. It will be run again. So there's nothing hidden or nothing that we don't want to provide anyone within the city of East Grand Forks, anyone that would be on the city council. So.
I have a question for you. The
Sure.
city council approved the rezone that industrial, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And from our annexation standpoint, from our city land use plan, we look at our land use plan to see what we would annex it as. It's contiguous to our other industrial areas. We would annex it. We would have preferred that it came in industrial because it's near to our industrial parks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to first this? What's that?
Don't we have to approve or deny?
That's what he's asking.
Yeah.
Well, I move that we approve, and we can limit the hours, we can limit the years, and they're required under every state regulation to adhere to any environmental issues.
So what would the hours you would be?
Well, it's stated in here 7 to 10, 6 to 10 in the morning. I mean, within that's within reason.
Dale?
And we don't have a second at this point in time. I'm just asking if you're going to make a motion.
So we can discuss.
Thank you.
Don't run away. Dale Helms, 613 2nd Avenue Northeast. I just have a question for Nancy regarding the outcome here today. This comes back to the council. Is it going to come back to a work session, or is it coming back to a council meeting, and when would that be?
Okay. So this does not come to a work session because typically any type of recommendation that we have from the city council goes directly then, or from the planning commission goes directly to the following city council meeting. So it will be at a formal city council meeting next Tuesday, April 19th, starting at 5 o'clock. And then what will happen is because of the need to have findings of fact, you have to have findings of fact to approve this type of permit as to why you approve or deny. We will, at that meeting, request that the city make a recommendation or make that motion to approve or deny with their reasons why they've approved or deny and any conditions. And then we will use those for our findings of fact, which will be approved then at the May 2nd meeting.
As a commission, do we include the same thing? Here's why we recommend?
I think it would be, I think for something like a special use permit and the fact that we are doing something where we're going to be preparing findings of fact, I think the council would like to know your reasons for or against why you voted for something.
And the permit that would be issued, we could restrict back the length that it would be issued for.
You can address, if you want to say the permit starts on May 15th and ends October 1st, you can do that. You can address things like time 6 to 10, 7 to 7 on Saturdays. You can address all of that. You can, obviously one of his was that you're required to apply for and receive any permits, you follow any monitoring and reporting adherence, and that you meet all city and state codes, fire code, building code, those types of things.
I would have a question. Can I still ask Avril something? So if we were to put a shorter term of permit and use, like what they're proposing, a year or something like that, would that change your thought process in this location?
Probably would. We're going to have to make a big investment in that area, so if we don't mind getting like a 10-year permit or something, but we're going to put millions of dollars into the site to bring it up and to have it for one.
Could you use the mic, please?
Oh. Sorry. We would look at least having 10 years because we're going to have to put millions of dollars into the site to bring it up to code and use.
Would be a significant input, yeah.
Yes.
So on the other side of the coin is, in here, you've represented a safe work environment, safe everything for us. I mean, why wouldn't you, there shouldn't be any hesitation for you to move forward if this is all gospel.
The fear isn't from the science, it's from the people here. They're scared. I understand their fears.
Got the information right here.
My children and my grandchildren live within this bubble, and a lot of our employees live in this bubble, and I understand their fears, because the unknown is fear, but people can die from too much water too. So, any other questions?
No, thank you.
On a note, the county last month approved an application for Knife River for 5 years, not 10. And again, the biggest concerns were smell, noise, and traffic.
They also approved one for us last year for 7 years.
So we had a first.
But those were temporary sites, I assume, or is that a permanent?
Hey, Mike.
Was the Knife River one temporary or permanent? You don't know? Okay.
What's his name? Seth, ask him. I would guess it's a temporary one, but there again, they allude to the fact, as Zavils have, that this is a very fluid job environment. I mean, it moves with job sites and so forth and so on. Whatever Anything else? If not, we have a motion to approve.
Correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay. You made a motion, but you wanted to set hours and times or dates. Did you want to do that? Do you want to?
Can we not just move on to the council and let them decide?
Okay. You can do that. Because again, it's just a recommendation, so.
Right. Yeah. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries, unless you want a division of the House. Show of hands.
We had 4 ayes and 1 nay from Mike.
All right.
Mike Powers. And so the recommendation, just so everyone's clear, the recommendation was to approve.
Oh, Gary.
Oh, sorry, Gary. We never got you.
That was a yes.
Gary is a yes. So we have 5. We have 5 yeas. Thank you, Ron, and 1 nay. So the recommendation is to approve the permit, that they follow all of the monitoring and reporting and regulation requirements as stated from the EPCA, the MPCA, and any other state codes, and that any type of special condition placed on it will be set by the city council.
Yes.
Okay?
Do you want to move on to the next item?
Yes.
Okay. Matter of preliminary and possible final approval of Enright addition. We have to have a public hearing on this.
I move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, public hearing is open. Nancy?
In order for a piece of property to be within city limits, it has to be platted. So the property that have recently annexed, they waited to plat until they were to determine if the piece was in fact going to be recommended for approval. So now we have the Enright addition plat. That is the property that said site's going to be on. It includes public right-of-way that runs north-south, an 80-foot public right-of-way into the lot. There's also an 80-foot right-of-way on the north side, and there is an access point that goes up and over the flood control structure. Zavros own the property on the other side. There are utility easements that run along the outside of those properties for any said utilities. And then the property ends at the toe of the flood control easement. So that's the property. Enright's own the property just to the south, that 45 acres. And then the city owns the flood control project that runs north-south that would be just to the east of it. And then Zavros owns the property between the flood control and Highway 2. So if in fact this gets approved, we may see an annexation of those additional 45 acres, the flood control project and the Zavros property just on the outside. But for today, we're only approving the annexation. The utility group has reviewed. They saw no issues. We got all the easements that we needed. We have right-of-way taken 80 feet, which is what our typical city right-of-way is. And so we make a motion, or we make a recommendation for final approval of said plat.
Any questions for Nancy?
If not, we need a motion to close the public hearing.
A motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to set close public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the hearing's closed.
I move that we annex the Enright addition.
Move to approve.
Correct.
Second. Okay, I have a motion and a second to
It would be to approve the plat of the
Enright addition. Yeah.
Thank you.
Final plat.
Yeah.
We're not going to do preliminary because it's a pretty simple.
We don't have to come back then.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We need
Aye.
Gary. Oh, we got an aye from Gary.
Gary?
Okay.
Motion carries.
I move that we adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Second.
Motion from Tim, second from Rick to adjourn.
We're done.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Gary.
Well, Mr.